The intimacy that we long for has no real place in patriarchy. Shame feels bad, you know it, you want to get out of it. Grandiosity feels good. That is the open secret. Grandiosity feels good. Break up the more, the vicious circle. And the way I do that is through joining through the truth and what we call waking up the client. Over and over again, you'll hear me say, class, what's our enemy? More of same. What's our friend? Something new and different. So that's what I'm going to try and do. RLT is very much about deconstructing patriarchy. The intimacy that we long for has no real place in patriarchy. It wasn't built for it. It was built for stability, not intimacy. Intimacy is an historically new demand. And we don't live in a relationship-cherishing culture. We live in a patriarchal, individualistic culture, and the field of psychotherapy is up to its eyeballs in colluding with the patriarchal, individualistic culture. How many of us here learned somewhere along the line in our training that for a boy to develop and become a healthy man, at some point he needs to separate from his mother? How many have heard that? It's complete bullshit. There's absolutely no research saying that. That's not psychology, it's patriarchy. The beginning of every boy's story starts with the death of the mother. From Parzival to Bambi, the mother dies and then the boy learns how to be a man. And one of my great mentors, Olga Silverstein, wrote a wonderful book I recommend it, called The Courage to Raise Good Men, The Courage to Raise Good Men. And the whole book is an argument against that nonsense. Children don't have to separate from their relationships. They have to renegotiate their relationships to make them broad enough to accommodate their growth and change. But the separation bullshit is, who came up with that? Not a mother. How many of you have heard if somebody wants to be cured of an addiction, they have to want to do it for themselves? How many of us heard that? Yeah. Can I ask you a question? If you got a guy in your office who wants to go to 12-step or rehab and get sober to save his marriage and spare his children, you're going to tell him that's not good enough? Again, it's the individualistic anti-relational bias of our culture and our field. So RLT stands against all that explicitly. We are inviting men, women, non-binary folk to move beyond patriarchy, beyond individualism, beyond traditional gender roles, so that men open their hearts and move into vulnerability and connection, which is literally asking them to reconfigure masculinity itself. We have to have some compassion for the bigness of our ask of these guys. We want you to unlearn everything that was forced on you as a 3, 4, 5-year-old and do it differently. The traditional role of women under patriarchy is resentful accommodation. And then after 50 years of feminism, some women have shifted from the feminine side of the binary to the quote-unquote masculine side of the binary. I have found my voice, look out. And I call this individual empowerment. I was weak, now I'm strong, go screw yourself. And it's part of the individual bias of our field. When someone in the one down position moves into the one up position, I was weak, now I'm strong, Katie bar the door, I'm going to tell my truth any old way I want to, and you just sit there and like it. People will cheer. Your codependent 12-step sponsor will cheer. Your women's group will cheer. Your individual therapist will cheer. Individual empowerment. The bane of my existence as a couples therapist is often individual therapists who are empowering their partners right out of a workable relationship. Relational empowerment is, I was weak, now I'm strong. This is what I want from you, honey. I love you. You love me. You want to please me. Let's roll up our sleeves and work together. What do you need from me to help you deliver? Let's work like a team. Who sounds like that? No one, unless we teach them. It's beyond the culture. In this culture, you can either be connected and accommodating, quote unquote, female. You can be strong and forceful, quote unquote, male. You can't be both at the same time because power pulls you out of connection, pulls you into the one up. So we teach loving power. I love you, you love me, this is what I want, what do you need? Let's go. And it's got a different energy and a different vocabulary and different tools. What I call ecological wisdom. Our relationships are our biospheres. We're not above them, demanding things. We're not underneath them, being codependent enablers, which is just a different form of control. We're in them. It's in our enlightened self-interest to take care of our biosphere. If you're one down, your biosphere needs you to stand up and speak up, but skillfully and with love, which means we have to teach you that. Mama didn't teach you that. If you're one down, speak up. If you're one up, come down. RLT owes a great debt to Carol Gilligan, great feminist psychologist. You cannot love from the one up. You cannot love from the one down. Love demands democracy. So we have a saying, we have 8 million sayings in RLT, and one of them is, we want the weak to stand up, we want the mighty to melt. And we deal with issues of grandiosity in ways I don't think many people do. You've heard, many of us in this room, that narcissistic personalities are untreatable. If you're being abused by a narcissistic spouse, get out. That's a good example of individual empowerment. Drives me berserk. In RLT, we take on grandiosity breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You'll see me do it. It's what we call joining through the truth. When you're dealing with a grandiose, difficult client, we're taught first you form a trusting alliance, and then maybe after a couple, 3 years, then you can confront them with the difficult truth. In RLT, we form a trusting alliance by dealing with the difficult truths right out of the starting gate. But you damn well better know how to do it. There's an art to it. Any fool can clobber their clients with the truth. Joining through the truth is telling difficult truth to people in a way that's so on their side, so loving and so accurate that they know it and they feel it and they'll feel closer to you and more trusting of you because you've told them the truth, rather than what we're taught in school, which is they'll blow up or they'll run away or they'll fall apart. All of which can happen, but we know how to deal with it when it does happen. When you're working with grandiosity, you have to understand the difference between grandiosity and shame. Shame feels bad, you know it, you want to get out of it. Grandiosity feels good. That is the open secret. Grandiosity feels good. Intoxication, which in RLT we see intoxication, that's a form of portal into grandiosity. Intoxication feels good. That's why we do it. Making out with your secretary feels good. Screaming at your kids feels good. In the moment, it creates a mess of your lives, but it feels good. Specifically, the more grandiose you are, the less empathy you have. The greater the grandiosity, the less tuned in you are. And the more grandiosity you have, the more warped is your assessment of negative consequences. Again, think about somebody in a manic episode, or drunk, or a teenage boy. When you are dealing with a shame-based person, if you love them, I don't think that's the most direct or effective way of dealing with issues of shame, but at least you're supplying what's missing. When you're dealing with a grandiose person, if you love them, so what? They already love themselves. The idea that every grandiose person secretly is insecure and shame-based is true for 50%. That's not true for the other 50%. Straight, false empowerment can produce a grandiose person. You're the greatest thing since sliced bread. False empowerment is a form of abuse. This is really critical. This comes from Pia. Those of you who know my work, my father was physical with me. When my father was beating me, on the receiving end of that beating, I was disempowered. That's the abuse we all think of, disempowering abuse, shame. But particularly same-sex parent, he was transmitting to me a message. This is what a grown man who's pissed off looks like. What's the problem? Rage is fine. What we call the adaptive child part of each person is made of both reaction to what's happening to you and taking in what's happened to you. We neglect that in therapy. Social psychologists talk about it a lot. Identification with the aggressor. Modeling is as important for your adaptation as reacting is. It's both. And so we invite the grandiose person to come down. How do we do that? Leverage. We don't do individual one-on-one transference work with grandiose people. We bring in the system. The system gives us the data we need, and the system gives us leverage. What is going to happen if this doesn't get better? We empower the one down one to stand up, and we use that as negative consequence, along with other negative consequences. We also throw in some positive consequences. You'll live longer. You'll have a better sex life. You won't hurt your children the way you were hurt. It's probably the biggest leverage I found. You can spare your children. Will you let me help you? And so we engage. We empower the one down to stand up. We engage the one up to come down. And they meet in the middle. Let me come out of the closet, so to speak. In the words of the great Harvey Milk, I am here to recruit you today. For those of you who are not in our training, I want you in our training. That's why I'm here. So the first phase of RLT we call waking up the client, joining through the truth, getting what's really going on the table. In order to do that, we have to have a sense of what's going on. If you're going to join through the truth, what truth are you joining with? Well, we have 8 therapeutic lenses that you learn. And they're not psychiatric, they're relational. The more is the one I will be focusing on. Every couples therapist knows it. The vicious circle, right? The more she pursues, the more he distances, and the more he distances, the more she pursues. The feedback loop. That's our patient, the more. That's one of the 8 lenses. The more is what we're here to change. Not necessarily save the relationship, but end the misery. And sometimes it ends and the couple transforms, and sometimes it ends and you release them. And sometimes you're not ineffective, and they just keep doing what they do no matter what you do. And you have to go home and have a cup of tea and let it go. But that's what we're trying. Break up the more, the vicious circle. And the way I do that is through joining through the truth and what we call waking up the client. I'm going to pick on Victoria. Victoria, I got bad news for you. You want to hear it? Angry pursuit is not seductive. Sorry, honey. You will never get your husband to be closer to you by screaming at him about how miserable you are that he's not close to you. That is not going to work. That's waking up the client. And I am trying to bypass her automatic subcortical fight, flight, or fix fawn, which is her adaptive child, what she learned to do as a kid in her family. And I'm reaching for what we call the wise adult part of you, prefrontal cortex. Come on, kiddo, you can do better than this. Let me teach you how. You're a good person who has been behaving badly. Let me rescue the good person underneath the bad behavior. This is healthy self-esteem in action. Healthy self-esteem, which we have to teach people, is your capacity to hold yourself in warm regard and feel proportionally bad about your bad behavior, both at the same time. If you don't feel bad about your bad behavior, you're grandiose, ultimately a sociopath. We want you to feel bad about your bad behavior. If you take yourself apart as a horrible human being, that's not remorse and guilt, that's shame, and will help you pull up out of that and pay attention to your partner. Bringing somebody out of grandiosity into appropriate remorse is synonymous with bringing them into connection, out of outer space into the warmth of human connection. I'm sorry I did this to you. That's phase 1. Joining through the truth, waking up the client, getting it on the table. Phase 2, once we get your bad behavior on the table, then we go back to your childhood. Where did you learn this from? Where did you see this? This isn't really you, Victoria. This is your adaptive child. This is what you learned to do as a kid. Who was the angry complainer in your family growing up? My mom. No kidding. So that's how we do it. Then we do inner child work. We do deep trauma work. You form a relationship with these immature parts of you, wounded child, adaptive child, and deep, experiential, like crying your eyes out, dialogue with your little 4-year-old girl who learned to complain like mommy. And we do that deep trauma work with your partner sitting next to you. Again, as part of our individualistic bias as a field, almost all trauma work occurs behind closed doors. Why? Why not do it with the person who lives with your adaptation day in and day out? Now they get to see where it comes from, and it opens up their heart. They have some compassion for that little girl. Of course you learned to yell and scream like mom. It was the only way you could be close to mom. Always have respect for the exquisite intelligence of the adaptive child. You learned to do back then exactly what you needed to do. God bless. Adaptive then, maladaptive now. Your prefrontal cortex has resources that your automatic knee-jerk response does not. Let me teach you. But you have to calm the triggering, the flooding, by doing trauma work enough to free up Victoria's wise adult so that she's not flooded with these automatic responses, or when she is, she knows what to do. We call it relational mindfulness. Take a break, take a walk around the block, take 10 breaths, get re-centered. Remember the person you're speaking to is someone you love, and the reason why you're speaking is to make it better. The adaptive child part of you doesn't remember that. The adaptive child part of you isn't interested in skills or intimacy. It only cares about survival. Yes, the adaptive child part, you can be right or you can be married. What's more important? Right. Much more important down the line. Other workshops teach you skills. We deal with the part of you that won't use them. The first skill is getting centered into the part of you that's interested in using skills to begin with. Neglect that and it's all, you can do it. You can use a skill out of your adaptive child, but nobody's going to buy it. Belinda, I've got some feedback for you. Do you want it? No. Try it in 20 minutes. The first skill is getting centered in the part of you that wants to use skills to begin with. We call that relational mindfulness. Out of the reactive whoosh into the thoughtful, okay, let me do this. And the beauty is that we can teach it. You can cultivate that. You can grow it like a muscle. We do it all the time. That's recovery. Second, consciousness. Your knee-jerk response comes up. I'm not going to complain about you. Victoria says to her husband, role play Victoria, you've been doing great, honey. Start with that. I'm so appreciative that you ... By the way, if you're interested, it would work even better for me if you might ... Would you be willing to try that? That's great. It's a whole new world. Then I'm angry because you're so shut down. Different world. The third phase is teaching skills and building on strengths. I don't ask Victoria to come up with that on her own. I teach it to her. And we're different from a lot of trauma people right now. We do not believe that once you remove the trauma, people will intrinsically know how to be intimate. Not in this culture. How to speak up with love. How to offer an apology that's not a yes, but. How to make repair, how to accept repair, how to cherish each other, how to move from complaint to request. These are all skills we have to teach people. We don't expect you to know it. So first, this is what you're doing that's blowing your foot off. This is how those two moves connect. Second, let's talk about where this comes from. And then third, let me teach you what different looks like. That's the rhythm of it. And I think it is the combination of all three of these together. And I don't know any other school that does all three. So first, confrontation. Second, trauma work. Third, teaching you how to do it better. Those three together produce transformational characterological change in each of the individuals and transformational change in the relationship. Over and over again, you'll hear me say, class, what's our enemy? More of same. What's our friend? Something new and different. So that's what I'm going to try and do.